Do the Clothes Make the Elephant? The Story of Babar and His Rise to the Throne. My name is Iris Green. This is English 218, Introduction to Children's Literature, and the date is 5/30/2016. The Story of Babar, the Little Elephant by Jean de Brunhoff, published originally in 1931 in French. The translation that I am focusing on is in English by Isabel Alonso Gomez. Jean de Brunhoff went on to publish 6 additional Babar books. His son later on took over the Babar series, publishing an additional 38 books. Babar is a little elephant who lives a happy and carefree life in the forest until one day his mother is shot and killed by a hunter. He flees to the city in fear of the hunter who tries to catch him. Once in the city, Babar meets a kind older woman who gives him money to purchase clothing. He picks out a fine green suit and finds himself quickly immersed into a life of civility as he is groomed and cared for by the kind old lady. Babar, however, misses his friends and family back in the forest. One day, 2 of his cousins arrive, Celeste and Arthur. He immediately dresses them and introduces them to his new way of living. Arthur and Celeste's mothers are very worried about their missing children and are notified of their location in the city by a stork. The mothers go to the city to retrieve their children and bring them back to the forest. Babar decides to accompany them on their return trip. Meanwhile, the Elephant King eats a mushroom and dies. When Babar arrives, the elders choose Babar as their new king as he brings with him the knowledge of man and the city. Babar accepts the nomination and marries his cousin Celeste. With his queen, they set off on a hot air balloon honeymoon adventure. One very critical scene in the story of Babar, the Little Elephant, is when Babar's mother is shot by a hunter. You can see this depicted in the 2 pictures in front of you. One day, Babar and his mother are spotted by a hunter. The hunter kills Babar's mother and then attempts to capture him. Babar flees the forest and heads to the city. This is a common trope, the loss of mother, and it is the catalyst for him leaving the forest. Here he finds a new life, and the figure of the old lady now replaces the maternal figure in his life. Another important scene in the book is when Babar goes from being an elephant who walks on 4 legs to being an elephant who walks on 2. This moment occurs when Babar enters into a department store and exits as a fully suited elephant. When Babar arrives in the city, he meets a kind older lady who gives him money to buy himself clothes. This older woman becomes Babar's benefactor. Babar walks into the department store on 4 legs, an animal from the forest. He is entertained by the elevator and is even reprimanded by the bellhop. "This is not a toy, Mr. Elephant." Babar was criticized as a celebration of colonialism, as it idealizes Babar's transformation from a savage 4-legged animal to that of a 2-legged, clothed, sophisticated, and now by default knowledgeable successor to the throne. The uncivilized, clothed native is taught the ways of civilization and returns home enlightened. However, critic Adam Gopnik points out that the story is not an unconscious instance of French colonial imagination, but he suggests instead it is a self-conscious comedy about the French colonial imagination. The absent parent, a theme often seen in many fairy tales and children's picture books. The death of Babar's mother at the hand of the hunter is the inciting incident that sends Babar away from the forest and into the city. It also leaves the position of the maternal figure open for the rich old lady to fill. She then becomes Babar's guide and benefactor into the life that awaits him. Author Herbert R. Cole writes in his essay, "Should We Burn Babar?" that the establishment and maintenance of power is presented as a major theme at the very beginning of the story. The hunter kills Babar's mother. He who owns the gun has the power over life and death. Babar knows this, and when he stumbles into a human world and gets seduced into adopting its ways, does he forget his mother's killer? Babar's journey begins when his childhood is heartbreakingly ripped from him, the death of his mother forcing him away from the forest and into a life of those responsible for her loss. talking, anthropomorphized animals. Babar is an interesting version of the talking animal because his journey does not begin at that of a learned or wise creature of the forest, but it is his encounter with the city life and the old lady that brings him civility. The rich lady who enters his life unquestioningly provides him with wealth and care and grooms him to become the wise elephant of the city. Herbert R. Cole writes in criticism of the rich lady, "She also has a learned professor give him lessons, and she shows Babar off to her distinguished friends. The only thing she does not give him is a map and food for the journey home. Class and wealth distinctions are drawn, and Babar is rewarded with his achievements upon his return home for the better elephant that he has become." Maturing of protagonist. Once again, we find a falsified version of the maturing of the protagonist. Babar becomes educated and mentored by the rich old lady who teaches him the ways of the city and man. Upon Babar's return to the forest, he finds that the king has passed and that they are seeking a successor. The elders deem that he has the knowledge to do the job, as he comes from the city. He has learned a great deal from men. Let us give him the crown. Babar's maturing is more through the perception of the author. Cole points out, all we are shown of his learning is that he knows how to choose clothes, order a meal at the restaurant, and add 2 + 2. He knows how to buy things, and once again we see that power lies with money. This assessment of his maturation promotes the concept that becoming civilized by his benefactor, he has realized his potential. Final lesson. Babar is a loved character by many, and his tales and their many adaptations have become familiar to all, spanning countries and generations. The lesson learned from the story of Babar the Little Elephant on its surface seems innocuous. However, Babar rises to power as the king because he becomes civilized. For decades, we have seen colonization in its many forms, hurting many cultures and civilizations. Perhaps Brunhoff means the tale to be a satire, as Gopnik suggests, or perhaps, as Cole warns, the lesson it teaches children is that of class differentiation and to be receptive to those who impede on peoples and enforce acculturation. In contemporary time, missionary work could be seen as an extension of this colonization, when a religious group goes into an area and provides care and food, but in return expect the peoples to convert to their religion. We need to be teaching children lessons that celebrate diversity rather than promote the loss of one's culture in the name of betterment. Babar loses his forest culture for that of the French, white, wealthy man. Babar can be found in over 40+ books. There have been many versions that have been published, but in addition to the book versions, there are also movie and television spin-offs. And starting in 1968, there was a French television series, Babar. In 1989, there was Babar the movie. In 1989, there was also a Canadian TV series, Babar the TV show. In 1999, there was a movie adaptation, once again, called Babar, King of the Elephants. In 2010, there was Babar and the Adventures of Badu, which was a spin-off that mainly focused on the other characters. It was also Canadian. In Babar, King of the Elephants, which is a full-length feature movie adaptation, there is no mention of Celeste as Babar's cousin, which is probably due to changes in social norms. The movie is an expanded version of the book, but incorporates well-known characters and several of the Babar stories. Also, the hunter is not shown shooting Babar's mother. This occurs off-screen, probably because this would seem too violent for children at that time. In the original story, Babar runs from the hunter to the city. In the movie, he's trying to find his way home when he ends up in the city. This depicts Babar as less cowardly. It seems the contemporary movie adaptation promotes a different sense of morality.